A waitress refused $20 from a homeless man. That decision made her a billionaire. But this isn't a fairy tale. This is about what happened when a dying man disguised himself as homeless to find one person, just one person, who would treat him like a human being when he had nothing to offer. What he discovered will break your heart. What happened next will restore your faith in humanity. You need to hear the story, because by the end, you'll never look at a struggling person the same way again. This is the true story of how a single act of kindness destroyed a family, built an empire, and proved that sometimes the people with the least give the most. Stay with me. This one will change you. Welcome to Reality Untold Stories. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Section 1. The Meeting 1000 Words. Let me tell you a story that will change the way you see people forever. It happened on a cold November evening in Seattle, in a small coffee shop that most people walked past without a second glance. The kind of place with cracked vinyl seats and a flickering neon sign that buzzed too loud. The rain was coming down hard that night, the way it does in Seattle when the sky just opens up and refuses to stop. Inside that coffee shop stood Rachel Martinez. She was tired, the kind of tired that lives in your bones. She had been on her feet for 16 hours straight, serving coffee and cleaning tables, trying to make enough money to keep her small apartment and feed her 6-year-old son, Tommy. Rachel was a single mother. Life had not been easy, but she never complained. She just kept moving forward, one day at a time. Near closing time, around 11 at night, the door opened. A gust of cold wind blew in along with an old man. He looked rough. His clothes were torn and dirty. His jacket was too thin for the weather. His hands shook as he shuffled toward the counter. He smelled like the streets, like someone who had been sleeping under bridges and eating from garbage cans. The other customers looked away. Some of them moved their bags closer, as if they were afraid. Rachel's manager, a man named Carl who cared more about money than people, walked over quickly. "Hey," Carl said sharply. "This isn't a shelter. You need to leave." The old man looked down at the floor. His voice was so quiet you could barely hear it. I just wanted something warm. Please. Just a small coffee." "I said get out," Carl repeated, louder this time. "We don't serve people like you here." Rachel's heart squeezed in her chest. She looked at this old man, really looked at him. She saw past the dirty clothes and the smell. She saw his eyes. They were sad, yes, but there was something else there too. Something human. Something that reminded her of her own father, who had passed away years ago. Without thinking, Rachel stepped forward. "Wait," she said to Carl. Then she turned to the old man with a soft smile. "Sir, please sit down. I'll get you something warm." Carl pulled her aside and hissed in her ear. "Rachel, what are you doing? He can't pay." "I'll pay," Rachel said simply. "From my tips. Just let him sit for a while. It's freezing outside." Carl shook his head but walked away, muttering under his breath. Rachel brought the old man a large cup of hot coffee, a sandwich from the display case, and a piece of apple pie. She set it all down in front of him gently. "Here you go," she said. "Take your time." The old man looked up at her with eyes that were suddenly shining with tears. "Why?" he whispered. "Why are you being kind to me?" Rachel pulled out a chair and sat down across from him for just a moment. "Because you're a person," she said. "And everybody deserves kindness. My mama used to say that how we treat people when they have nothing tells us who we really are." The old man ate slowly, like every bite was precious. When he finished, he reached into his torn pocket and pulled out a crumpled, torn $20 bill. It looked like it had been through a washing machine and a trash can. He pushed it across the table toward Rachel. "Please," he said. "Take it. It's all I have, but I want you to have it." Rachel looked at that $20 bill. She thought about her rent, which was already late. She thought about Tommy's shoes, which had holes in them. She thought about the electricity bill that she didn't know how she would pay. $20 would help. It would really help. But she also saw the man's trembling hands. She saw how thin he was. She knew that $20 might be the only thing standing between him and complete desperation. Rachel picked up the bill, smoothed it out gently, and then folded it back into the old man's hand, closing his fingers around it. "I can't take this," she said quietly. "Where I come from, kindness isn't something you buy. It's something you give. Please keep your money. You need it more than I do." For a long moment, the old man just stared at her. Then a single tear rolled down his weathered cheek. He nodded slowly, put the money back in his pocket, and stood up. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. "Thank you for seeing me." Then he walked out into the rain and disappeared into the night. Rachel went back to wiping down tables, not knowing that the old man who had just left was actually William Ashford, one of the richest real estate developers on the West Coast. She had no idea that his company owned half the buildings in downtown Seattle. She didn't know that he was worth over $3 billion. And she definitely didn't know that he had just been testing the world, searching for something he had lost long ago. Proof that good people still existed. William Ashford walked slowly to his car, which was parked 3 blocks away, where his driver had been waiting. As he climbed into the warm leather seats, he held that torn $20 bill in his hand and cried. For the first time in 30 years, someone had treated him like a human being, without wanting anything in return. And in that coffee shop, Rachel Martinez finished her shift, counted her small pile of tips, and walked home through the rain, never imagining that her life was about to change forever. Let me tell you what William Ashford had been going through before he walked into that coffee shop. 3 weeks earlier, William had been sitting in a doctor's office with views of Puget Sound, the kind of office that rich people go to, with expensive art on the walls and coffee that costs more per cup than most people spend on lunch. His doctor, a kind woman with gray hair and gentle eyes, had given him news that no amount of money could fix. "I'm sorry, William," she had said. "The cancer has spread. Stage 4. Pancreatic. We can make you comfortable, but realistically, you're looking at 6 months. Maybe less." William had sat there in silence. He was 72 years old. He had built an empire from nothing. He had started as a construction worker, saved every penny, bought his first property when he was 25, and built it into one of the largest real estate companies in the Pacific Northwest. He had money that most people couldn't even imagine. Private jets, mansions, cars that cost more than houses. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Because death doesn't care about your bank account. William had 2 children. His son, Derek, was 45. His daughter, Victoria, was 42. He called them both that same evening and asked them to come to his penthouse apartment. He needed to tell them about his diagnosis. Derek arrived first, in his expensive suit and his designer watch. He hugged his father briefly, the way you hug someone when you're supposed to, not because you want to. "So, what's this about, Dad?" Derek asked, checking his phone. "I've got a meeting in an hour." Victoria arrived 10 minutes later, her face perfectly made up, her designer bag probably costing more than Rachel made in 6 months. William told them. He sat them down and explained what the doctor had said. 6 months. Maybe less. There was a moment of silence. And then Derek spoke. "Okay," he said slowly. "So, we need to talk about the transition plan. The company's shares, the properties, the trusts. We should probably meet with the lawyers this week." William felt something cold settle in his chest. "Derek," he said quietly, "I just told you I'm dying." "I know, Dad, and I'm sorry," Derek said, but his eyes were already calculating. "But we need to be practical. There's a lot to organize." Victoria leaned forward. "Dad, are the offshore accounts protected? And what about the estate taxes? We need to make sure everything is structured properly." They talked for another hour. Not once did either of them ask William how he felt. Not once did they ask if he was scared, or if he needed anything. They talked about money, about assets, about control. And when they left, William sat alone in his penthouse, looking out at the city lights, and realized something terrible. His own children didn't love him. They loved what he could give them. For 3 days, William couldn't sleep. He lay awake thinking about his life. He had spent 50 years building wealth, and what had it brought him? A son who saw him as a bank account. A daughter who saw him as an inheritance. Employees who smiled to his face because they had to. business partners who shook his hand while planning how to betray him. Then an idea came to him. A dark, desperate idea. If everyone in his life only saw him as a rich man, what would happen if he became invisible? What would happen if he stripped away all the money, all the power, all the status? Would anyone show him kindness then? William decided to find out. He wanted to know if there were still good people in the world. Real people. People who would help someone simply because it was right, not because they would get something in return. So he disguised himself. He put on torn clothes from a donation bin. He messed up his hair. He stopped shaving. He made himself look homeless, invisible, the kind of person that most people avoid eye contact with. Then he went out into the city. His city. The city where everyone knew his name, except now nobody recognized his face. The results broke his heart. He tried to enter his own luxury hotel. Security threw him out without even asking his name. He went to a restaurant where he'd had a business lunch just a week before. They wouldn't let him through the door. He sat on a bench in a park, and a mother pulled her children away from him, whispering warnings. For 5 days, William Ashford walked through Seattle as a homeless man. And for 5 days he learned a brutal truth: when you have nothing, you are nothing to most people. You become invisible. Less than human. He was shoved, ignored, insulted, and rejected. Not once, not twice, but dozens of times. By people in suits. By people in expensive cars. By people who had everything. By the 5th day, William was ready to give up on humanity altogether. He was ready to leave his fortune to his ungrateful children and die knowing that kindness was dead in the world. That's when he walked into Rachel's coffee shop. That's when everything changed. Because Rachel didn't see a homeless man. She saw a person. She didn't see someone who could give her something.
She saw someone who needed something.
And when she refused that $20 bill, when she told him that kindness wasn't for sale, William finally found what he had been searching for. He found proof that goodness still existed. He found someone who would give everything and ask for nothing. As he sat in his car that night, William made a decision that would shake his entire family to its core. He called his lawyer and told him to come to the penthouse immediately. There was a will to rewrite, an empire to redirect, a legacy to correct. Because William Ashford had finally found someone worthy of everything he had built. And it wasn't the people who shared his blood. It was the woman who shared her heart. The next morning, William Ashford sat in his private study with his lawyer, a sharp man named Thomas Green who had handled William's legal affairs for 20 years. Thomas arrived with his briefcase and his usual professional smile, but that smile faded when he saw the expression on William's face. "Thomas," William said quietly, "I need to change my will. Completely." Thomas set down his briefcase slowly. "William, are you sure you want to do this now? I know the diagnosis has been difficult, but perhaps you should take some time to think." "I've done nothing but think," William interrupted. "For 3 weeks, I've been thinking. And I know exactly what I want to do." He told Thomas everything. About the disguise.
About the test.
About the 5 days of rejection and cruelty. And about Rachel Martinez, the waitress who had given him dignity when she had nothing to gain. Thomas listened, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. "William," he said carefully, "I understand you're grateful to this woman. But we're talking about billions of dollars. Your children." "My children," William said, his voice hard, "have never once asked me how I'm doing. They've never asked if I'm scared, if I need anything. All they want is my money. They've been circling me like vultures since the day I told them about the cancer. But they're your blood." "Blood doesn't make you family," William said. "Character does. Kindness does. This woman, this waitress who can barely pay her rent, she gave me more in one night than my children have given me in 40 years. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened his briefcase. "All right," he said. "Tell me what you want." They worked for hours. William wanted everything structured carefully. The company, the properties, the investments, all of it would go to Rachel Martinez. But there were protections that needed to be built in. Rachel would need lawyers, advisors, people she could trust. William knew what was coming. He knew Derek and Victoria would fight. They would accuse Rachel of manipulation. They would drag her through the courts and the media. They would try to destroy her. "I don't want her to know yet," William said. "Not until after I'm gone. She needs to be protected. Set up a trust. Make sure she has the best legal team money can buy. I want her ready for the war that's coming." "And your children?" Thomas asked. "What do you want to leave them?"
William thought about this.
He wasn't cruel. Even now, even after everything, he wasn't cruel. "Derek can have my watch collection," he said. He always admired them. "And Victoria can have her mother's jewelry. The pieces that belonged to my wife before she passed. Maybe it will remind her of what love actually looks like." "No money?" Thomas asked. "No shares in the company." "Nothing," William said firmly. "They'll have enough from their own careers. And maybe, just maybe, not having my money will force them to find something real in their lives." Over the next 2 weeks, everything was arranged. Documents were signed. Trusts were established. Legal protections were put in place. William made sure that every detail was perfect, that every possible challenge was anticipated. He worked with a determination that surprised even Thomas. "You really believe in her," Thomas said one afternoon. "This woman you met for 20 minutes." William looked out his window at the Seattle skyline. "I believe in what she represents," he said. "I've spent my whole life around powerful people, Thomas. CEOs, politicians, billionaires. And you know what I learned? Power doesn't reveal character. It hides it. People are nice to you when you have power because they want something from you." He turned back to Thomas. "But when you have nothing, that's when you see who people really are." And Rachel saw a cold, hungry old man, and she helped him without hesitation. "She didn't know who I was. She didn't want anything from me. She just did what was right." That's rare, Thomas. That's precious. Meanwhile, across the city, Rachel Martinez had no idea that her life was about to explode into something unrecognizable. She was still working double shifts at the coffee shop. Still coming home to her small apartment where Tommy waited with homework and stories about his day. Still counting pennies and praying the car would start each morning. She did think about the old man sometimes. She wondered if he was okay, if he'd found somewhere warm to sleep, if he'd had enough to eat. She said a little prayer for him sometimes, the way her mother had taught her to pray for people who crossed her path. One Tuesday afternoon, about 3 weeks after that rainy night, Rachel was serving coffee when she saw a man in an expensive suit walk into the shop. He looked out of place among the worn booths and faded menus. He walked directly to her. "Rachel Martinez?" he asked. She felt a spike of fear. Men in suits usually meant trouble. Bills she couldn't pay. Legal problems. "Yes," she said carefully. "My name is Thomas Green. I'm an attorney. Is there somewhere we could talk privately?" Rachel's manager let her take a break, and she sat across from Thomas in the corner booth, her hands shaking slightly. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. "No," Thomas said gently. "Nothing like that. I'm here to talk to you about William Ashford." Rachel looked confused. "I don't know anyone by that name." Thomas pulled out his phone and showed her a picture. It was a professional photo, a man in a suit at some fancy event. But Rachel recognized the eyes. Those sad, kind eyes. "That's him," she whispered. "The old man from a few weeks ago."
But he didn't look like this.
He looked homeless, Thomas finished.
Yes.
That was intentional. William was testing something. And you, Rachel, you passed a test you didn't even know you were taking. Rachel felt her heart pounding. Is he okay? Is he all right? Thomas's expression softened with sadness. "I'm afraid William passed away yesterday morning. The cancer. But before he died, he made arrangements. Very specific arrangements. And they involve you." Rachel felt tears spring to her eyes. "He died? But I didn't even know his real name."
I didn't, she stopped. "Wait.
What arrangements?" Thomas took a deep breath. William Ashford was a very wealthy man. A real estate developer. Billionaire, actually. And he left something for you. Rachel's mind was spinning. "Like money? How much?" "I mean, I don't want to seem greedy, but if it's enough to help with Tommy's school, or maybe—" "Rachel," Thomas said gently. He left you everything. The coffee shop seemed to tilt. Rachel gripped the edge of the table. Everything? What do you mean, everything? I mean his entire estate, his company, his properties, his investments. All of it. You're now one of the wealthiest women in America. Rachel's vision blurred. She thought she might pass out. This couldn't be real. This had to be a mistake. A joke. A dream. But Thomas's face was serious. And Rachel's life had just changed in ways she couldn't even begin to understand. The reading of William Ashford's will took place on a gray Monday morning in a law office that overlooked Elliott Bay. The room was all dark wood and leather chairs, the kind of place where powerful people made powerful decisions. Derek Ashford arrived first, confident and composed. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than Rachel's car, and he sat in one of the leather chairs like he owned it. His sister Victoria came in 5 minutes later, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, her expression carefully neutral. They were both there for the same reason, to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Their father's empire. The business they'd been preparing to inherit for years. Thomas Green entered with a folder of documents. He greeted them both professionally, but there was a tension in the air that made the room feel smaller. "Thank you both for coming," Thomas said, taking his seat. "I know this is a difficult time. Your father wanted me to handle this personally." "Let's just get on with it," Derek said, checking his watch. "We all know what the will says." Thomas looked at him steadily. "Actually, Derek, I don't think you do." He opened the folder and began to read. At first, it was standard legal language, formal declarations about sound mind and clear intent. Derek and Victoria waited, impatient. Then Thomas read, "To my son, Derek Ashford, I leave my collection of watches, which he has long admired. May they remind him that time is precious and should not be wasted on greed." Derek's face went blank.
Wait, what?
Thomas continued, "To my daughter, Victoria Ashford, I leave her mother's jewelry collection. May it remind her of the love her mother showed freely, without condition or expectation." Victoria removed her sunglasses slowly. "That's it? Jewelry?" "I'm afraid so," Thomas said calmly. "This is a joke," Derek said, standing up. "This is some kind of sick joke. Where's the company? The properties? The actual estate?" Thomas turned the page. "The remainder of William Ashford's estate, including all business holdings, properties, investments, and liquid assets, are to be placed in trust for a single beneficiary, Rachel Martinez of Seattle, Washington." The silence that followed was like a crack of thunder. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Derek exploded. "Who the hell is Rachel Martinez?" he shouted. "This is insane."
He was sick.
He wasn't thinking clearly. "You can't seriously." "The will is completely legal," Thomas said firmly. "Your father was evaluated by 3 different psychiatrists in the weeks before his death. He was of sound mind. This was his clear and intentional wish." Victoria's voice was ice cold.
Who is she?
"Some girlfriend? Some nurse who manipulated him when he was weak." "She's a waitress," Thomas said simply. "A waitress?" Derek's face was turning red. "Our father left billions of dollars to a waitress? This is fraud. This is elder abuse. We'll fight this. We'll tear it apart in court." "You can try," Thomas said calmly. "But I promise you, Derek, this will is airtight. Your father anticipated your reaction. Every possible challenge has been addressed." Victoria stood up, her hands shaking. "That money is ours. We're his children. His blood. Some random woman doesn't get to just take." "Your father didn't see it that way," Thomas interrupted. "He left you both a letter. Perhaps you should read it before you make any decisions." He handed them each an envelope. Derek tore his open immediately. Victoria's hands trembled as she opened hers. They read in silence, and as they did, their expressions changed. Derek's anger faded into something that looked like shame. Victoria's face crumpled, and she turned away. William's letter was simple but devastating. He wrote about his disappointment, about watching them care more about his money than his life, about the test he'd performed, walking the streets as a homeless man, and how their own city, the city he'd built, had treated him like garbage. And then he wrote about Rachel, about her kindness, about how she'd given him dignity when she had nothing to gain. The letter ended with words that cut deep. You had everything, and you learned nothing. She had nothing, and she gave everything. That is the difference between you and the person who now carries my legacy forward. Derek crumpled the letter and threw it on the table.
We're contesting this.
We're hiring investigators. We'll find dirt on this woman. We'll prove she manipulated him somehow. Do what you need to do, Thomas said. But I'll tell you right now, you won't find anything. Rachel Martinez is exactly who she appears to be, a single mother working 2 jobs trying to take care of her son. She didn't even know your father's real name until 2 days ago. She knew enough to trick him, Victoria said bitterly. Nobody is that nice without an agenda. Maybe that says more about you than it does about her, Thomas replied quietly. The meeting ended with threats and anger. Derek and Victoria stormed out, already calling their lawyers, already planning their attack. Thomas sat alone in the conference room for a long moment, exhausted. This was just the beginning. He knew what was coming. The lawsuits, the media circus, private investigators digging into Rachel's life, looking for anything they could use against her. They would try to paint her as a gold digger, a manipulator, someone who took advantage of a sick old man. And Rachel had no idea. She was still at home, overwhelmed and confused, trying to process the impossible news that her life had completely changed. She'd called in sick to work for the first time in years. She'd sat on her couch, holding Tommy, crying tears she didn't fully understand. She didn't want billions of dollars. She just wanted to survive. She just wanted to give her son a good life. She just wanted to be kind to people because that's what her mother taught her. But kindness, she was about to learn, made powerful people very, very angry. The storm was coming, and Rachel Martinez, whether she was ready or not, was standing right in its path. Let me tell you how the story ends, or rather, how it begins again, because this isn't really an ending. It's a transformation. The first few months after William's death were the hardest of Rachel's life. Harder than being a single mother. Harder than working double shifts. Harder than anything she'd ever faced. Derek and Victoria came after her with everything they had. Lawyers. Private investigators. Media leaks. Suddenly Rachel's face was on the news. Headlines called her a gold digger, a manipulator, a con artist. Reporters camped outside her apartment. Her son Tommy couldn't go to school without cameras following him. They dug through her entire life looking for dirt. They found parking tickets. They found an old boyfriend who told lies for money. They twisted every fact into something ugly. One news channel ran a story suggesting she'd planned the whole thing, that she'd somehow known who William was and staged the encounter. Rachel wanted to give it all back. She told Thomas Green that she couldn't do this, that she never wanted the money, that they should just give it to Derek and Victoria and leave her alone. But Thomas sat her down in his office and showed her something. A video. William had recorded it a week before he died, when he could barely stand up, when the cancer was winning. In the video, William looked directly at the camera. "Rachel," he said, his voice weak but clear. "If you're watching this, it means you found out about the will. And I'm guessing my children are making your life very difficult right now. I'm sorry for that. I truly am." He coughed, caught his breath, continued. "You're probably thinking about giving it all back. About making this easier by just walking away. Please don't. Not because of the money. Because of what it means." William leaned closer to the camera. "My children learned to see people as resources. As things to be used. That's partly my fault. I taught them that money was what mattered. But you, Rachel, you showed me something I'd forgotten. You showed me that character matters more than cash. That dignity costs nothing, but means everything." His eyes were shining. "I'm not giving you my fortune because you were nice to me one time. I'm giving it to you because of what you'll do with it. Derek and Victoria would use it to make themselves more powerful. You'll use it to make other people's lives better. That's the difference. That's why you're the right choice." The video ended. Rachel was crying. Thomas handed her a tissue. "He believed in you," Thomas said. The question is, do you believe in yourself? Rachel thought about her son, about all the other single mothers like her, struggling to survive, about all the people working 3 jobs and still falling behind, about the homeless man she'd helped, who turned out to be a billionaire, but also about all the other homeless people she'd met who would never get that chance. She wiped her eyes. Okay, she said. Tell me what I need to do. The legal battle took 6 months. Derek and Victoria threw everything they had at the wheel, but Thomas had been right. It was airtight. Every challenge failed. Every accusation fell apart under examination. Finally, a judge ruled in Rachel's favor. The fortune was hers. Legally. Permanently. But by then, Rachel had already started to change the world. She didn't move into a mansion. She stayed in her apartment, though she made sure the rent was paid and Tommy's school was covered. Instead, she focused on other people. She started small. She paid off the debts of every person who worked at the coffee shop. She gave her manager Carl enough money to retire. She found the homeless man she'd seen on her street corner and got him into housing and treatment. Then she thought bigger. Williams' real estate company owned dozens of buildings across Seattle. Rachel didn't sell them. Instead, she converted 3 of them into free housing for homeless families. Real apartments with dignity, not shelters. Places where people could rebuild their lives. She started a foundation that paid for medical care for people who couldn't afford it. She funded after-school programs in struggling neighborhoods. She hired teachers and counselors and social workers. She created job training programs that gave people real skills and real chances. But here's what mattered most. Rachel never forgot where she came from. Every Tuesday night, she and Tommy still had simple dinners at home. She still treated everyone she met with the same respect she'd shown William that rainy night. She still said hello to the janitors and learned the names of security guards. She still saw people as people, not as resources or stepping stones. The media eventually came around. The same reporters who'd called her a gold digger started writing different stories. Stories about the single mother who'd turned billions into kindness. About the waitress who'd become a force for good. About real change happening in Seattle because someone who understood struggle was finally in charge. Derek and Victoria faded away. Derek eventually got a job at a smaller company, learning for the first time what it meant to work without a safety net. Victoria started volunteering, slowly, quietly, maybe searching for something her father had tried to teach her too late. 5 years after William's death, Rachel stood in the grand opening of the William Ashford Community Center, a beautiful building in the heart of Seattle where people could get job training, medical care, counseling, and hope. Tommy, now 11, stood beside her. A reporter asked her, "Do you think you deserved this fortune?" Rachel thought about that question carefully. "No," she finally said. "Nobody deserves billions of dollars while others are struggling. But I was given a chance to make a difference. And I'm doing everything I can not to waste it." She looked at the center, at the people walking through its doors with hope in their eyes. "William taught me something important. He taught me that wealth isn't really about money. It's about what you do with what you have." He had billions and felt empty. I had nothing and felt rich because I had love and purpose. Now I have both, and I'm trying to share them with as many people as I can. The reporter smiled. "What would you say to people watching this story?" Rachel looked directly at the camera, just like William had in his video. "I'd say this. You never know who's watching when you choose to be kind. You never know whose life you might change. But more importantly, being kind changes you. It reminds you that we're all connected, that we all matter, that a simple act of compassion can ripple outward in ways you can't even imagine." She took Tommy's hand. "So, be kind. Even when it's hard. Even when nobody's watching. Especially when nobody's watching. Because that's when it matters most. That's when you find out who you really are." And with that, Rachel Martinez walked into the community center, surrounded by people who'd been given a second chance because someone had seen their dignity when they had nothing else. The torn $20 bill was framed now, hanging in Rachel's office. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that kindness is never wasted. That character counts more than cash. that sometimes the smallest gesture creates the biggest change. William Ashford had spent 50 years building an empire of buildings. Rachel Martinez was building something different, an empire of hope. And that, my friends, is a legacy that will never crumble. Remember this story the next time you see someone struggling. The next time you have a chance to help when nobody's watching. The next time you wonder if kindness even matters anymore. It matters. It always matters. And sometimes it changes everything.